On a bustling Saturday afternoon at a crowded shopping mall in Houston, Texas, the air buzzed with the hum of conversations, the rhythmic shuffle of footsteps, and the familiar sounds of modern life. Amid the lively flow of shoppers, Jamal Carter, a black high school teacher, renowned for winning the Teacher of the Year award, entered the mall with a simple purpose: to buy a special birthday gift for his daughter. Dressed casually in a gray t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers, Jamal blended seamlessly with the crowd. He was just another father on a mission, hoping to find the perfect necklace to show his love for his little girl. After browsing the mall for a while, Jamal stepped into a high-end jewelry store where the glimmering displays of necklaces, bracelets, and rings sparkled under bright lights. His eyes landed on a simple yet elegant silver necklace, exactly the kind of gift he thought his daughter would love. But as he admired the piece, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He caught the wary glance of a store employee, their eyes scanning him with thinly veiled suspicion. The atmosphere shifted subtly but unmistakably. Moments later, one of the employees discreetly picked up the phone, calling mall security and reporting Jamal for suspicious behavior. Not long after, Officer Linda Mitchell, a mall security officer in a crisp uniform, entered the store. Unlike the other customers, Linda's demeanor was neither relaxed nor welcoming. Her sharp eyes locked onto Jamal as if he were a threat. Her gaze followed his every movement, unyielding and scrutinizing. Although Jamal remained calm, years of experience had taught him to recognize when he was being singled out. The weight of her judgment hung heavy in the air, making it impossible to ignore. In that moment, all he wanted was to complete his purchase and leave, but the situation was quickly veering in a direction he hadn't anticipated. The unspoken prejudice he had encountered many times before was now staring him in the face, and Jamal was about to confront a challenge far greater than simply buying a gift for his daughter. As Jamal Carter admired the elegant silver necklace in the jewelry store, the soft hum of conversation and background music provided a comforting ambience. His focus was solely on finding the perfect gift for his daughter. But in the corner of his vision, he noticed Officer Linda Mitchell step into the store. Her presence, though unremarkable to others, immediately set off an alarm in his mind. He had learned to recognize such moments: the quiet scrutiny, the unspoken doubt, the looming tension. Jamal decided to stay composed, dismissing the unease as mere coincidence. Little did he know, this was the calm before the storm. Linda's sharp gaze never left Jamal. She walked closer, her boots clicking against the polished floor, the sound slicing through the serene atmosphere of the store. Jamal pretended not to notice, focusing on the necklace in his hands. He approached the counter, preparing to ask for assistance, when Linda's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Excuse me, sir, can I have a word with you?" Her tone was firm, not a request but a command. The surrounding customers instinctively turned their heads, sensing something out of the ordinary. Jamal glanced at her, his face calm yet inquisitive. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked politely. "We've had reports of suspicious behavior," Linda replied, her hand resting near her holster. "I'd like to know what you're doing here." Jamal blinked, momentarily thrown by the absurdity of the question. "I'm shopping, just like everyone else," he said, gesturing to the necklace he held. "Is there something wrong with that?" Her expression hardened. "I'll need to see some identification." Jamal's heart sank. He had been here before in different forms, in different places. The thin veneer of civility crumbled, replaced by an all-too-familiar sense of frustration. Maintaining his composure, he replied, "Officer, with all due respect, I don't believe I need to show ID to browse in a store." Linda's posture stiffened, and her hand inched closer to her holster. "Refusal to cooperate isn't going to help you, sir. I suggest you comply." The tension in the room thickened, the air heavy with unspoken words. Jamal could feel the eyes of other customers on him, some curious, others apprehensive. A woman near the entrance whispered to her friend, glancing nervously at the unfolding scene. A child clung to their parent, wide-eyed and silent. "Cooperate?" Jamal asked, his voice steady but laced with disbelief. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm just here to buy a gift for my daughter." "Surely that's not a crime." Linda's face reddened slightly, her authority challenged in front of an audience. She took a step closer, her voice rising. I saw you acting suspiciously, pacing around the store and eyeing the displays. You fit the profile of someone who might be casing the place. Jamal felt a surge of anger but suppressed it. Years of working with students had taught him the value of patience and measured responses. Pacing? I was walking. Eyeing the displays? That's what customers do in a store. What exactly am I being accused of? Linda's frustration boiled over. If you don't provide identification, I'll have no choice but to detain you for further questioning. The store grew eerily silent as the gravity of her words sank in. Jamal's pulse quickened, not out of fear for himself, but for the rapidly escalating situation. Any wrong move could turn disastrous, and he knew it. His voice remained calm, even as the storm brewed around him. Officer, I'm not resisting. I'm simply asking for respect. I've done nothing to warrant this treatment. But respect was not on Linda's agenda. With a sudden motion, she unclipped the holster and placed her hand on her gun, her voice slicing through the thick air. Down on the ground, now. Gasps rippled through the store. The child clutching their parent began to cry softly. A man near the watches section muttered, "This is too much." Phones were raised, their tiny cameras capturing every second of the scene. Jamal raised his hands, his heart pounding but his face composed. "Officer," he said firmly but without aggression, "please think about what you're doing. This isn't necessary." Linda's expression betrayed a flicker of uncertainty, but her resolve quickly returned. "Get down, or I will make you." Jamal slowly lowered himself to his knees, the humiliation of the moment washing over him like a cold wave. His hands remained raised as he knelt on the cold floor, the necklace he had chosen now discarded beside him. The audience around him grew bolder, their murmurs turning into shouts of disapproval. "This is ridiculous," a woman called out, her phone aimed at Linda. "He hasn't done anything." Another man, his face red with anger, stepped forward. "Put the gun away. This is a shopping mall, not a war zone." Linda's authority was slipping. She glanced around, her grip on her weapon tightening as the crowd grew louder, more unified in their opposition. But before the situation could spiral further, a voice boomed from the back of the store. "What's going on here?" The store manager, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, strode toward the scene, followed by a security guard. The crowd parted to let them through, their voices quieting slightly in anticipation. The manager's name tag, Greg, glinted under the fluorescent lights as he assessed the situation. "Officer," he said, his tone firm but calm, "this man hasn't done anything wrong. We've been monitoring the cameras. He's just shopping." Linda's face twisted in frustration, the authority she once commanded slipping away. Jamal, still on his knees, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The crowd murmured in agreement, their collective voice rising again. "Let him go!" someone shouted. Linda hesitated for a long moment before finally lowering her weapon. "You're free to go," she said curtly, the words laced with bitterness. Jamal rose slowly, brushing off his jeans and meeting Linda's gaze. His voice was steady but carried the weight of his frustration. "Free to go. After all this, that's all you have to say?" Linda said nothing, turning on her heel and walking out of the store as the crowd jeered behind her. Jamal turned to the manager, who offered a quiet apology. But the damage was done. Jamal had been publicly humiliated, treated as a criminal for no reason other than the color of his skin. As he walked out of the store, the cameras continued to follow, capturing the moment that would soon spark a nationwide outcry. The tension in the jewelry store reached a fever pitch as Jamal Carter, still kneeling on the cold, tiled floor, tried to maintain his composure. Around him, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder, their disbelief and outrage cascading into a collective voice of dissent. Phones were held high, capturing every second of the unfolding drama. Jamal's gaze shifted momentarily toward the discarded silver necklace lying just a few feet away. He had entered the store to buy a gift for his daughter, a small act of love, but now he found himself in the center of a humiliating spectacle. Yet even as humiliation clawed at his dignity, he remained calm, a pillar of strength amidst the chaos. Officer Linda Mitchell stood over him, her hand gripping the holster of her weapon. Her eyes flickered between Jamal and the increasingly hostile crowd. The jeers were growing louder now, questioning her judgment and accusing her of overstepping her authority. A middle-aged man in a flannel shirt shouted, "This is racial profiling, plain and simple." A woman nearby added, "He hasn't done anything. Leave him alone." The officer's jaw tightened as she tried to assert control over a situation spiraling beyond her grasp. Jamal's voice broke through the din, measured and steady. "Officer, this isn't right. I've done nothing to warrant this treatment. Please listen to reason." His words were calm, but their weight cut through the noise like a knife, forcing even the most skeptical onlookers to pause. Before Linda could respond, the store manager, Greg, entered the fray. Flanked by a young security guard named Trevor, Greg's expression was a mixture of urgency and determination. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice echoing across the store. The crowd parted to let him through, their collective gaze shifting toward him, as if he might be the voice of reason the situation so desperately needed. Linda turned to Greg, her hand still resting on her holstered weapon. "I'm handling it," she said curtly, but her tone betrayed her faltering confidence. "This man was acting suspiciously. I have reason to believe he may be a threat." Greg's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the scene. The kneeling Jamal, the agitated crowd, the officer's tense posture. His voice, though calm, carried an edge of authority. "A threat? He's kneeling on the floor with his hands in the air. What exactly is he threatening?" The crowd murmured in agreement, emboldened by Greg's intervention. Linda's face reddened, and she doubled down. He was pacing around the store, eyeing the displays like he was casing the place. I had to act. Trevor, the young security guard, stepped forward hesitantly. His voice was quiet but firm. "Ma'am, I've been watching the security cameras. This gentleman hasn't done anything suspicious. He was browsing, just like everyone else." The weight of Trevor's words hung in the air, a stark contradiction to Linda's accusations. The crowd erupted into a mixture of applause and calls for justice. "Let him up!" one voice shouted. "You owe him an apology!" another demanded. Linda's grip on her holster loosened slightly, but her pride refused to let her back down completely. "Are you sure about that?" she asked, her voice sharp, a last-ditch effort to salvage her authority. "Positive," Trevor replied, his voice unwavering. "I can show you the footage right now if you want." Linda's gaze darted around the room, taking in the faces of the crowd. Angry, disappointed, judgmental. The tide had turned against her, and she knew it. Reluctantly, she stepped back, her hand falling away from her weapon. "You're free to go," she said curtly, the words clipped and devoid of apology. Jamal rose slowly, brushing off his jeans as the crowd erupted into applause. He turned to Linda, his expression calm but resolute. "Free to go?" he echoed. "After being publicly humiliated, treated like a criminal in front of all these people? Is that really all you have to say?" Linda's face flushed with anger and embarrassment, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned on her heel and marched toward the exit, the crowd parting to let her through. Phones followed her every move, capturing her retreat in stark contrast to the moment she had entered with authority and confidence. Greg stepped closer to Jamal, his face etched with regret. "Mr. Carter, I am so sorry for what just happened. This should never have occurred." Trevor chimed in, his tone equally apologetic. "If there's anything we can do, please let us know." Jamal gave a tight smile, his composure intact, despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "It's not your fault," he said quietly, "but this—" He gestured to the store around him, the crowd, the lingering tension in the air. "This can't keep happening." As Jamal turned to leave, the crowd parted for him, their expressions a mix of admiration and shame. Some clapped, Others patted him on the back, and more than a few whispered words of encouragement. His footsteps were steady, but his mind was racing. What had started as a simple trip to buy a gift had turned into a humiliating ordeal, and yet, amidst the pain, Jamal felt a sense of purpose forming. Outside the store, his phone began buzzing incessantly. Messages poured in from friends, family, and even strangers, all sharing links to the videos that had already begun circulating online. Captions like "racial profiling at its worst" and "teacher humiliated for shopping while black" painted a vivid picture of the injustice he had endured. Jamal paused, looking at his reflection in the glass window of a nearby store. His face, though calm, bore the weight of a deeper resolve. This wasn't just about him. This was about every person who had ever been unfairly targeted, silenced, or humiliated. It was about his daughter, and ensuring she would grow up in a world where her worth wasn't questioned because of her skin color. As he walked toward the parking lot, he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The fight for justice was far from over, but Jamal was ready to stand at the forefront, his story a powerful reminder that dignity and truth could overcome even the deepest biases. And as the world began to take notice, Jamal realized that sometimes the most painful moments in life could ignite the strongest calls for change. The ordeal that Jamal Carter endured in the jewelry store became more than just a personal moment of humiliation. It was a mirror reflecting systemic issues deeply rooted in society. At its core, his experience was a glaring example of how racial profiling and unconscious bias continue to pervade everyday interactions, stripping individuals of their dignity and reducing them to stereotypes. However, from this painful episode emerged valuable lessons that transcended Jamal's story, resonating with communities across the nation and inspiring meaningful conversations about justice, respect, and equality. One of the most poignant lessons from Jamal's experience is the importance of maintaining composure in moments of adversity. Despite being unfairly targeted, humiliated, and placed under intense scrutiny, Jamal chose to respond with dignity and calmness. This response not only diffused an already volatile situation, but also allowed the truth to emerge without further escalation. His restraint highlighted the power of patience and the importance of controlling one's narrative, even when the odds feel insurmountable. For others who find themselves in similar situations, his example serves as a reminder that measured responses can often speak louder than anger, ensuring the focus remains on the injustice rather than the reaction. Another critical takeaway from Jamal's story is the strength of collective action. The presence of the crowd, their willingness to record the incident, and their vocal opposition to the officer's actions created a layer of accountability that was impossible to ignore. It underscored the idea that standing up against injustice, even as a bystander, has the power to change outcomes. The solidarity of those present in the store transformed Jamal's experience from a private struggle into a public reckoning, amplifying the call for change. This serves as a powerful reminder for individuals everywhere. When you witness wrongdoing, your voice, no matter how small it may feel, can contribute to a larger movement toward justice. From a systemic perspective, the incident shone a harsh light on the role of unconscious bias in shaping decisions, particularly in positions of authority. Officer Linda Mitchell's actions, driven by preconceived notions rather than evidence, demonstrated how unchecked biases can lead to profound consequences, not only for the individual targeted, but for the broader trust in institutions. This highlights the urgent need for systemic reforms, including comprehensive bias training, accountability measures, and mechanisms to address complaints of discrimination effectively. As Jamal's case demonstrated, firing one individual may address an immediate issue, but it doesn't tackle the root causes embedded within the system. Jamal's experience also highlighted the transformative power of storytelling and visibility. The videos recorded by bystanders went viral, turning a moment of injustice into a national conversation. This demonstrates the importance of documentation and social media in the fight for equality. By sharing their stories, individuals like Jamal can shine a spotlight on systemic issues that might otherwise remain hidden. For others, this is a call to action. Don't underestimate the impact of amplifying a story of injustice. Whether it's recording an incident, sharing a post, or participating in conversations, Every action contributes to the collective demand for change. Lastly, Jamal's journey underscored the importance of perseverance and using one's voice to advocate for others. Instead of retreating into silence, he transformed his experience into an opportunity to speak out against discrimination and inspire systemic change. His message was clear. The fight against injustice isn't just for the targeted individual, but for every person who might face similar prejudice. His actions remind us that silence enables oppression, while voices united in truth and justice can dismantle even the most entrenched biases. For those reflecting on Jamal's story, there are actionable lessons to take forward. First, confront your own biases and challenge the assumptions you make about others. Recognize that these biases, if left unchecked, can influence actions and perpetuate systemic inequities. Second, be an active ally. If you witness injustice, don't look the other way. Your voice could be the catalyst for accountability. Third, push for systemic reforms in your community. Advocate for better training, transparency, and policies in law enforcement, workplaces, and public institutions to ensure fairness and respect for all. Jamal's story reminds us that the road to justice is long and often painful, but it is paved by the courage to stand against wrongdoing, the willingness to support others, and the collective determination to create a more equitable world. Each person has a role to play, and by learning from stories like his, we can move closer to a society where dignity and respect are extended to everyone, regardless of race, background, or circumstance.